Welcome to one of the last sessions of this year's Ricina Dialogue. I think it has always been one where I think a diversity of views and a diversity of themes has been explored, and I think we'll all leave the Ricina Dialogue enriched, intellectually enriched. The topic today, as was highlighted, is made in Africa, the continent that will shape the future. And
in the marble halls of the LEC Palace, French officials gather around a glowing map of Africa. Red zones flicker across the Sahel, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, countries that once formed the backbone of France's post-colonial influence. But tonight, those red lights don't represent control, they represent loss. The reports on the table are blunt. French troops expelled, military bases nationalized, uranium contracts suspended, embassies besieged by protesters demanding independence from neo-colonial rule. The phrase repeated in intelligence briefings is simple and chilling. Africa is uniting, and France is losing Africa. Across the continent, a new alliance has taken shape, the Alliance of Sahel States (EAS), a coalition led by the young military leaders of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. 3 flags, 3 nations, 1 message, no more foreign domination. What we are witnessing is more than a diplomatic crisis. It is the collapse of a 60-year-old empire of influence, and the birth of a new African power structure. From the gold mines of Kayes to the uranium fields of Arlit, from Ouagadougou's protest squares to the corridors of the African Union in Addis Ababa, a silent revolution is rewriting the future of the continent. To understand why France is panicking, we must travel back to the 1960s, the moment of African independence that wasn't truly independent. When African states gained their flags, France kept something far more valuable: control over money, trade, and security. For decades, the CFA franchised 14 West and Central African economies to the French treasury. Every year, up to 50% of their foreign reserves were kept in Paris. French companies, protected by special agreements, dominated energy, infrastructure, and banking. And when instability appeared, France sent troops under Operation Barkhane, claiming to fight terrorism but, critics argue, protecting economic interests. By 2013, France had 5,100 soldiers stationed across the Sahel, supported by the European Union and the United States. Billions were spent, thousands of lives were lost. Yet by 2020, jihadist violence had tripled. Locals began to ask, was France fighting terrorism or feeding it? In Bamako, a taxi driver put it simply to reporters, "They say they fight for us, but the more they fight, the more we die." That frustration exploded into the first coup in Mali in 2020, led by Colonel Assimi Goïta. Burkina Faso followed with Ibrahim Traoré, the Niger with General Tchiani. Each removed pro-French governments and called for a new path, a path of sovereignty, partnership with Africa and the global South, not subservience to Paris. The real shock to France wasn't political, it was economic. For decades, French energy Orano, formerly Areva, extracted up to 15% of France's uranium from Niger. The Sahel also supplied gold, cotton, and oil vital to French and European industries. When the AES suspended mining contracts and demanded new terms, markets trembled. In 2024, Niger announced a deal with China and Russia to explore uranium under a 50-50th revenue share, ending the era of 80-20th splits favoring France. Burkina Faso began nationalizing gold concessions. Mali banned foreign NGOs tied to Paris. Even Senegal and Chad started to question long-standing military pacts. The ripple reached Paris's energy grid itself, with nuclear power providing 70% of France's electricity. A disruption in Sahel uranium threatened domestic supply. Suddenly, the question wasn't just foreign policy, it was lights out in Lyon. For the first time since Charles de Gaulle, French elites faced the reality that Africa might survive, even thrive, without them. While France struggled to respond, the Sahel leaders moved fast. In late 2024, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso signed a mutual defense pact, creating the Alliance of Sahel States. They withdrew simultaneously from ECOWAS, accusing it of serving Western rather than African interests. These foreign ministers met in Bamako and declared, "Our security will no longer be outsourced. Our resources will no longer be stolen." Russia supplied drones and advisors. Turkey offered infrastructure investment. China pledged a $12 billion Sahel Connectivity Initiative to build railways linking Niamey, Ouagadougou, and Bamako by 2030, for the youth of the Sahel -65% of whom are under 25. This alliance became a symbol of dignity. In the dusty streets of Ouagadougou, murals of Thomas Sankara reappeared. Children painted slogans, "Our land, our future. Africa will rise," and perhaps for the first time in modern history, those slogans felt achievable. In Washington and Brussels, policymakers debated how to contain the Sahel contagion. In Paris, Macron called emergency meetings, warning of Russian infiltration, but across Africa, the narrative was different. Finally, a continent standing tall. The African Union cautiously supported dialogue. South Africa invited the AES to the BRICS summit, marking a diplomatic victory for the bloc. And in 2025, the first Pan-Sahel Economic Forum opened in Bamako, announcing a common infrastructure fund worth $5 billion, financed not by the IMF, but by partnerships with the Middle East and Asia. The empire that once dictated policy through colonial governors and military missions now finds itself negotiating with equals. France isn't just losing bases, it's losing the narrative, the belief that Africa cannot stand on its own. The Sahel's revolution is not built on revenge, it is built on remembrance of those who fought for freedom, and on the resolve of a new generation who refuse to be defined by the past. From Dakar to Addis Ababa, from the deserts of Agadez to the ports of Lagos, the message echoes, Africa is not a pawn. Africa is the board, the world is changing, the empire falls. And from its dust, a continent rises, confident, united, unstoppable.